After not being able to get George Springer, the New York Mets still have more work to do and still have close to $30 million left to spend, and they will spend it. The Mets will make some more moves. So in this video, we're going to look at the possible different scenarios the Mets could pursue with the rest of their money and how they could finish off this offseason. So we could look at get one player, get two players, you get one but can't get the other. We'll look at every different scenario. If you like this video talking about different possibilities for the New York Mets and just talking about other players in general, make sure to leave a like, comment down below. What would be your offseason plan? Give me contract numbers, exactly what you would want to do with the remaining money. If there are certain trades you want to pursue, we can also talk about that. We could talk a little bit about the Eugenio Suarez / Sonny Gray. Will that happen? Will that not happen? We'll see. I don't think that's a big enough rumor by enough sources to really make a whole video about it quite yet. And then you can press subscribe. Makes my day. Makes me happy. Working our way towards 1,000 subscribers. So I always love talking to you guys in the comment section. So let's talk about what the New York Mets could do. We'll start off with Centerfield because the fact that the Mets were willing to offer Springer 6 years of $125 million shows you that the New York Mets do want to do something in center field. Now, the two main options, as we know, is Jackie Bradley and Kevin Pillar. We've talked about it a lot, but I think Kevin Pillar gives you some more offense and Jackie Bradley gives you more defense. Jackie Bradley is a year younger. A lot of people are crazy that the Mets are too left-handed, so Pillar is right-handed, so he has that going in his favor. But I will say that I don't think the lefty thing is too big of a deal for me personally, just being frank about it. I think that when you look at the Mets lineup and you see the lefties are McNeil, Nimmo, Conforto, and Dom Smith, and the right-handers are Alonso, James McCann, J.D. Davis, and then Francisco Lindor switch, so he could be left or right. The Mets have a balance. In a given day, they could have 4 lefties and 4 righties, so that's perfectly fine balance. If there is no DH and Dom Smith were to go to the bench, you still have 4 lefties and 4 righties. If there's a DH, then you have 5 lefties to 4 righties. So, I mean, again, that's 1 more lefty, so I don't think that's the biggest deal in the world for me personally. What's really interesting is that when you look at the numbers between Bradley and Pillar, they look similar, but, I mean, this chart from Fangraph shows that Bradley is significantly better than Kevin Pillar, and just other experts, I guess you could say, on Twitter, they just don't really connect the Mets to Pillar. They don't really view Pillar in the same category as Jackie Bradley. I don't know exactly why, what criteria they're going off of, but I mean, when I watch Kevin Pillar, when I look at his stats, I don't see why this guy should not be pursued by the Mets. And if that's the case, couldn't you technically get him for a much lower cost? If that's the case, that gives you more money for other areas like pitching, which is what we'll get to next. I could definitely see the Mets getting Jackie Bradley. For me personally, I would like to know if there's a DH or not before I do that and move Dom Smith to the bench, because if that's the case, I would just re-sign Jake Marisnick for only a couple million, be a late game defensive replacement, and that's it. Leave my lineup alone, because the Mets lineup is still good. What they're not great at is pitching. I still wish the Mets could upgrade their starting rotation just a little bit more. I mean, the only guy that has that kind of upside is Bauer, but I still think that Bauer is unrealistic, so we're going to try to be realistic in this video. And Taijuan Walker is still a guy that is very appealing to me because of his age, and just because when this guy is healthy, that definitely is a big if, but he can be effective. When you compare Walker to the other pitchers on this list, you have Odorizzi, who's older, had his injuries. Paxton, older, has injuries. The Mets attended Anibal Sanchez and Julio Teheran's workout, and both of those guys, I mean, Anibal Sanchez is getting older. Julio Teheran will be turning 30 soon, so he's not that old, but he still is on the decline because, I mean, 2020 was nowhere near the Julio Teheran that, as Met fans, we have seen in the past. We've seen this guy dominate the Mets time and time again, so who knows if he can get back to that former self. As I've said before, since Walker is younger, I believe he has more upside than these other pitchers, and I think that the fact they're not committing a lot of money to George Springer, we'll see how much money the Mets commit to center field or the bullpen. I haven't seen too many teams really talking about Taijuan Walker all that much, and if the Mets are necessarily connected to him, but I think that he could be a guy that really shouldn't cost that much money and definitely could be an upgrade for this rotation. If the Mets really like what they saw in the workout from Anibal Sanchez or Julio Teheran, or even what they saw in Paxton's workout, if you wanted to bring them onto the team, I'm okay with that. You could never have enough starting pitching. And then Gio Gonzalez said that he would like to be a Met because he has done well in Citi Field during his career, and I'm okay with that because he's another guy like Joey Lucchesi, who the Mets acquired in the trade a couple days ago, just another guy that could push Steven Matz, because Matz is just going to realize that, listen, I'm playing for a contract, and in order to even play for a contract, I have to beat these other guys. I have to beat Gonzalez, I have to beat Lucchesi, or if the Mets bring in any other pitchers. So I just think that that kind of motivation just has to get you a good version of Steven Matz, because if the Mets rotation could get the best selves of everybody, like you get the best of DeGrom, best of Syndergaard, of Carrasco, Stroman, and Matz, the Mets have a good rotation. Because we know that Syndergaard could be really good, Stroman could be an all-star, Carrasco could be really good, and we've seen Matz have very good starts. So if, that's a big if all those guys were good, Mets have a perfectly fine rotation. Next thing we'll move to is the bullpen, and obviously the guy is Brad Hand. I mean, we've talked about him a lot, and it looked like the Mets almost had him on Friday, but now I really think that since you don't have to worry about having $100+ million committed somewhere else, you could really focus on Brad Hand and just get the deal done. Has to be 2 years. 3 would be pushing it. If anything, I want that to be a club option just to get the deal done. What I don't like is that I heard John Heyman say that the Blue Jays could outbid the Mets again to get Brad Hand, which would be really unfortunate after what just happened with Springer. You don't want to see the Mets keep getting outbid, but if the Blue Jays were to offer Brad Hand something crazy, you would have to let that go. You can't overpay a reliever. You can't outbid someone for a reliever. Even someone as good as Brad Hand, it is very, very risky. You shouldn't go crazy for Brad Hand. I would really like to get him, but if they're unable to get him and you really want a lefty, Justin Wilson and Jake McGee are both options that could at least get some guys out in the bullpen, not lockdown guys that you could trust in a big playoff game, but just someone that is a left-handed pitcher that is better than Daniel Zamora. Another reliever the Mets have been in contact with is Jeremy Jeffries. Jeremy Jeffries is a really tricky guy because he had a really good 2018, had a bad 2019, but then had a really good 2020. Me personally, being frank about it, I don't like the domestic violence stuff. I don't want anybody with domestic violence on my team personally, but I guess the Mets are going to look past that. But this guy, it's tough with relievers because they could be every other year. And if Jeffries had a bad year and then a good year and then a bad year and a good year, I mean, he could technically be on track for another bad year. So I think that would definitely be a risk. I wouldn't pay too much money because he has shown you that he is not consistent. Jeremy Jeffries is a guy that you would probably have more confidence in than Brad Brock and Miguel Castro and Familia and Dylan Betances. So I definitely think that he could be an option for this team, especially if they have interest in him. Shouldn't cost too much, and I'm all for anything that could help the bullpen. And it's just unfortunate that he does have something like domestic violence on his resume. Another reliever that I really like to see the Mets get, but they have not been connected to yet, is Trevor Rosenthal. He had a really good 2020, so I would like to see if that's the real Trevor Rosenthal, if he could actually be that good again in 2021. I still think the Mets should consider some of the Braves relievers like Mark Melancon and Darren O'Day and Shane Green. Those are all good pitchers, and they definitely could help out your team and would make the Braves a little worse. Anything the Mets could do to separate the gap between them and the Braves, I feel like they should be all for that. I mean, that's the team you're trying to catch and beat in your division, and then you're probably going to face them in the postseason. So you really have got to make yourself better than the Braves, and that could be one of the ways you could do it. Now, as far as the bench is concerned, the Mets have interest in Kike Hernandez, which is a really good sign because Kike is a guy that could provide a lot of value to this team. He could play all over the place. He's young. Kike has a lot of personality. He's a guy that would fit in very well with players like Francisco Lindor and J.D. Davis and Pete Alonso and McNeil and Conforto. All these guys that have a lot of passion. Marcus Stroman that really show a lot of energy. Kike would fit in right in with those guys in the clubhouse. He could get a big hit for you in a postseason game. He's clutch like that. He could hit 20 home runs if he played every day. Not going to hit for a high average, but he could really help out a team, and I would love to see the Mets bring in Kike Hernandez. There are some other utility guys. Asdrubal Cabrera is someone I still would like to see as a Met because he can hit. He could play a few different positions. Danny Santana is a guy you could take a flyer on after a bad 2020 and a really good 2019. He could play everywhere, so I would consider him. Tommy La Stella, he could play all over the field, give you a good bat as far as average is concerned. Marwin Gonzalez is someone I still like just because he can play everywhere and he is a switch hitter. And then you also have Jurickson Profar. I think the Mets have interest in as well. He could really swing the bat. He could play everywhere and is also young. So it's good to see that the Mets are looking at utility because that is another position that they definitely could use to upgrade this team. Now, me personally, I still don't love Tomas Nido. I wouldn't mind a backup catcher. And the three guys that really stand out is Tyler Flowers, Jason Castro, who would probably be tough to get. He's probably looking for a starting job in my mind, and Alex Avila. Other than that, the guys are like Ramos and Robinson Chirinos. We had them already. Yadier Molina, I don't think is realistic. You know, guys like that, they just don't seem like fits for the Mets. I tried to be as realistic as I could with this list. And it's just good to see that there are plenty of options out there. Like, since the Mets weren't to get Springer, there still are other center fielders. Even if the Mets can't get Brad Hand, there are other relievers out there. So there still is multiple ways that they could do this. So the main scenarios are you either could get Jackie Bradley and Brad Hand, maybe a lower level starting pitcher, or you could get Kevin Pillar and Brad Hand and a lower level starting pitcher. Another possibility is no center fielder, just get a late game defensive replacement like Marisnik, get Brad Hand and a starting pitcher. So the Mets could go a lot of different ways about it. I'd like to know which scenario you guys would like to pursue. And until the next one, be safe, be smart, be healthy, and let's go Mets.